Hey, you good, Chris?
I am here.
If you just want to merge your stuff to main, because you copied the door test one, right? That's where you branched from.
I don't know.
Well, you must
What?
have, because you have all my door shit, right? Like you have the door rune and the prefabs and shit.
I think so. Hold on. What's up? Why do you think I threw away your apple? No, I didn't put everything behind your bed in the trash. I put trash behind your bed. I did not throw it away, so you literally sat there and watched me do it, Rem. If you know I did it, why didn't you say anything then? I know, because you're filthy and you probably lost it for the first time ever. Rem, stop now before you lose your stuff. You just got it back, so.
Um, you must have the stuff because you merged to main or whatever. So.
Rem, I can't hear a damn thing when you're constantly whining. I'm sorry. I don't know where your Apple Pen is. When's the last time you saw it? It was behind your bed. When did you see it behind your bed last? When? Because you're just saying this. Bro, one more thing and you will have no screens to use your Apple Pen on.
Alright, you here? You're here, I cannot hear you.
Okay. Hold on, let me just finish what I'm doing and then I'll try to merge.
Yeah, just merge the main and then I'll handle the rest. Because I don't think it'll be that. I mean, the changes that I'm going to be making are going to be basically are pretty deep. But I think by the time I'm done, it should be pretty straightforward for how you do stuff. But this will let us. Well, I'll wait till you're done, so you can actually focus on what I'm saying. I'm gonna get ready to start cooking. Just let me know when you're ready.
Alright, I'm ready whenever. To do submerging.
Yeah, just go ahead and merge to main. Like, merge your changes that you have now to the main branch. And
How do I do
then
that? I just go to main, or I just go to vertical slice and
choose a branch to merge into. So you want us to check out main. So and then you want to do when you go to the branch select, there's a choose. There's a button that says choose branch to merge into. Right where you just were. I guess you could also use that. That button looks like it works too. Merge into current branch. That sounds right. Then pick vertical slice. What is it saying? Checking. Oh, it's just making sure it works. Okay. All right, and then merge. Create a
was
merge.
that in vertical slice or vertical slice, Chris?
I don't know. Just look at the history, see when the last time you committed was. That's a long time ago.
Alright, yes, okay. Vertical slice.
All right, and then just merge your stuff in, and then once you have your stuff merged, that should be good. And then I'll take care of the rest.
So create a merge commit.
Yep.
And I'm committing this.
Yeah, just say merged vertical slice into main. Oh, or maybe not. I guess it's doing it automatically for you. Go look at the history. Did it just already just name it merge or something? Okay, it already did. Good. Then just push that. Okay. So then that'll have your changes. I'll merge main into my branch, and then
Worried about.
it's the repel rune. That's the only other rune you did.
Well, the terrains data stuff. None of that really super matters.
Well, you're on a different thing, right? And I'm not really messing with any world stuff, so I have not changed any terrain since I've.
I guess
I've
yes,
stopped
it will.
playing.
Since I.
You renamed the terrain stuff, and then. Yeah, it should all automatically work. It should all be fine. And I have not messed with any terrain stuff anyway. I'm not gonna be doing that stuff. I'm just basically what I did. What I'm doing is so that you can. We need a way to transfer control from different runes to rune, right? If you have like a repel and an attract rune, you really only want one of them affecting it at a time. Otherwise, it'll go back and forth and look probably buggy and like crap. So I made a set of. Basically, I have the player hold drop and the runes themselves are gonna be children of an object controller class, which will have functions called take control setup, controlled object update, and release control setup. And basically, and I've documented it all really well. When it comes time, I'll show you how to do it more explicitly. But basically, it has all the take control setup is before you take control of it, what do you need to do? Like, for example, for the player hold drop, I need to change the gravity to be false. I need to turn off the colliders with the player, and I need to set the grab point stuff. And then when there's a release control setup, it's the exact opposite. So when I'm done with it, when I'm not controlling it anymore, what do? I turn the gravity back on. I turn the collision back on, and I turn the grab point stuff. I turn that to null, back to null, and stuff. Right. So then when I define that in the class, I can use the methods take control and release control to dictate basically how I control the or basically try to control the object, whatever it is. So take control. Like the neat thing about it is, it's it will request control. So if the player is grabbing something and it's the controller, and a rune is trying to request control, it'll reject it. And then so as long as the player is the one holding it, it'll just keep rejecting it and nothing will happen. But as soon as the player let goes, take control will be granted, and then the stuff that you have defined in take control setup will run. So it all should work pretty relatively well. The only learning curve you'll have to learn is just the basics, the how to use how to define the setup and update methods. But it's really easy. You're just copying, and it'll force you to define them, because it's they're abstract methods and they have to be overridden. Yeah. So I'll get it set up with all the existing stuff, and it also makes a nice little control scheme. Like it shows a really nice way to it like really organizes the code to do it this way, which is nice. And basically the object itself is responsible for, it knows what is controlling it, and it will call whatever is controlling it. And I also made what's controlling it stuff. I made it a set, so that if there are multiple objects at any point that we want to be able to control, like theoretically the grow shrink rune wouldn't interfere with another one. So maybe it's okay for two things to have control.
If I was, for a while I've thought about just like a zero gravity rune that would just, define a zone where gravity turned off or anything that's in there, and I wouldn't think you would need to.
Only have one controller for that. Yeah. So yeah, if that's the case, then we still have controllers, but we can have multiple controllers, and it basically just goes through the list of controllers and calls the controlled object update method on the controller, and then passing itself as the variable to that method, and then the controller is responsible for the logic, but the object itself is responsible for calling it, which makes it nice and simple for how basically it would how it can run through multiple controllers, and how you can easily control what controller can do what, because then all the logic for whether or not you can take control, and if we want to do control priorities and stuff like that all can live now in the object itself in one place, rather than having to figure out, like, okay, if these two runes are requesting control at the same time, how do I handle that? Where do I put that logic? Well, it's now all on just the object controller logic. And it does the nice thing of having now because the player grabs its own controller that we could probably assume is top priority, then we can that all is easy to control too. We don't have to constantly be checking, if the player's holding anything or whatever. All you have to do is, if you want the rune, if you want to control the object, you don't have to worry about anything really, as long as you defined your take control setup methods. And if you have no setup, you can just leave those methods blank. They don't actually have to do anything. But all you have to know, you don't need to know like what the player hold drop variables are or anything else like that. All you need to know is that to request control of the object, you have to use the take control method. And if it returns true, then you get control of the object.
Right on.
So it should be simple.
Should I not push anything for a while until you
Not to main, but you can push to your own stuff. Just don't. Well, I guess it depends on how much you're messing with the runes. Because all I'm doing is messing with the runes. I'm messing with the runes, the grab point, and anything that used to access the held by variable is now
trying to do a inspect, so it shouldn't have anything to do with the runes. Just
yeah. So you can push all you want, just as long as you're not messing with the runes themselves. It shouldn't be a pain or anything.
I just need to figure out how to make it lerp between these 2 points. I had code that I thought would do it, but it just does nothing.
The way that works in Unreal Engine is really easy. It has just a pitch, a yaw, and stuff, and you can just edit the pitch and the yaw, and it is super easy to use.
Does it not work in Unity where I should just be able to say like, you know, transform equals lerp?
Well, the problem probably is, this is like, are you still using, you're not using Cinemachine anymore, are you?
Not for this.
Yeah, so like Cinemachine sometimes overrides that shit, and it can be a pain, but if you're
I
not
mean, there's
using
still a
Cinemachine,
Cinemachine brain on things, something, maybe that's why. Or actually, no, maybe I took it off. I can't remember if I tested it before I took it off.
changing the transform and the position and the rotation should work. If it's not working, the easiest thing to do is to test is to like run it in the do print statements before and after you are trying to manually change, and if it keeps getting set back to what it used to be, so like if it does change but it keeps getting set back in the next print statement, like, you know, you'll do a print of what the rotation is, then change the rotation, then a print of what the rotation is. And if the second print does change it, but then it reverts back to the first print on the next cycle, then you know something's overriding, and there's code somewhere manually setting the rotation back to what it's, you know, to something else. And that's where the problem is. Alright, I'm gonna cook dinner, but if you have any questions or anything specific, I'll
You said I should get off main though? I should be
Yeah,
working.
get off main and go back to your vertical slice. I just need you to merge your current changes into main so that I can use them because I'm gonna merge main into my branch next, and then I'll have your repel stuff. And it's just a repel that you mess with, right? None of the other stuff.
I don't think so. If it was
Not
minor. Like
Alright. Alright, I'm going to focus. Hey, cutie. Hey, good boy. You're a good dog. Oh yeah.
Oh, it is working now, so maybe it was the fact that there was a Cinemachine brain on there before.
Alright, so in 5 minutes I'm going to show you how to build a dialogue system like this. It's definitely pretty shallow and not pretty, but it's functional. There's no gourmet meal happening here, this is fast food. But the clock's ticking, so let's get into it. So I have a brand new empty Unity project here, and the first thing we want to do is right click in our hierarchy and go down to UI, and we want to add in a panel. This panel is going to be our dialog box, so we can go ahead and name it such. And then before we do anything, let's click on our canvas first and configure that. We'll go down to the canvas scaler and set UI scale mode to scale with screen size. You can set the X and Y values to 3820 by 2160 if you're targeting 4K, or 1920 by 1080 if you're targeting HD, which is what I'll be doing. Down to UI, and we want to add in a panel. This panel is going to be our dialog box, so we can go ahead and name it such. But the clock's ticking, so let's get into it. So I have a brand new empty Unity project here, and the first thing we want to do is right click in our hierarchy and go down to UI, and we want to add in a panel. This panel is going to be our dialog box, so we can go ahead and name it such. And then before we do anything, let's click on our canvas first and configure that. We'll go down to the canvas scaler and set UI scale mode to scale with screen size. You can set the X and Y values to 3820 by 2160 if you're targeting 4K, or 1920 by 1080 if you're targeting HD, which is what I'll be doing. Then we'll click back to our dialog box. Now you don't even have to use the dialog box, or you can make it look however you want. But what I'm going to do is go down to the color here and make the opacity 100%. And then in the inspector, I'm just going to fill in some rect values I was playing with before, but we'll be doing 100 for the left, 500 for the top, 100 for the right, and 100 from the bottom. And it should look something like a dialog box by the time you're done filling that out. We can then right click on dialog box and go down to UI, and we're going to use text Mesh Pro, which is a much more high quality text object. And it'll ask us here if we want to import the essentials, which we do, so we'll press import. Once that's done importing the essentials, we can click on our text object that has been created. We'll come down here to vertex color and open it up, and I'm just going to make the color black. We can set it to bold, and I'm going to up the font size to something like 70. And then once again, we're going to change the rect values in the inspector. So I'm just going to set the width and height to 1500 by 300. With those values in the scene editor, you'll see the text box itself fit nice and snug within the page. And then finally, we just need like a private index to track where we are within the conversation. So we'll say private int index. So let's go ahead and do this. Underneath the start and update method, our lines collection of scene. And then for an argument, we'll pass in, and then we can open up the lines collection. No gourmet meal happening here, this is fast food. But the clock's ticking, so let's get into it. So I have a brand new empty Unity project here, and the first thing we want to do is right click in our hierarchy and go down to UI, and we want to add in a panel. This panel is going to be our dialog box.
With back to school season, Grammarly is a student essential you need to download. So they currently have a 50% off promo sale for
Alright, so in 5 minutes I'm going to show you how to build a dialog system in our hierarchy and go down. So let's get into it. So I have a brand new empty Unity project here, and the first thing we want to do is right click in our hierarchy and go down to UI, and we want to add in a panel. This panel is going to be our dialog box, so we can go ahead and name it such. And then before we do anything, let's click on our canvas first and configure that. We'll go down to the canvas scaler. Panel. This panel is going to be our dialog box, so we can go ahead and name it such. And then before we do anything, let's click on our canvas first and configure that. We'll go down to the canvas scaler and set UI scale mode to scale with screen size. You can set the X and Y values to 3820 by 2160 if you're targeting 4K, or 1920 by 1080 if you're targeting HD, which is what I'll be doing. Then we'll click back to our dialog box. Now you don't even have to use the dialog box, or you can make it look however you want, but what I'm going to do is go down to the color here and make the opacity 100%. And then in the inspector, I'm just going to fill in some rect values I was playing with before, but we'll be doing 100 for the left, 500 for the top, 100 for the right, and 100 from the bottom. And it should look something like a dialog box by the time you're done filling that out. We can then right click on dialog box and go down to UI, and we're going to use text mesh pro, which is a much more high quality text object, and it'll ask us here if we want to import the essentials, which we do. So we'll press import. Once that's done importing the essentials, we can click on our text object that has been created. We'll come down here to vertex color and open it up, and I'm just going to make the color black. We can set it to bold, and I'm going to up the font size to something like 70. And then once again, we're going to change the rect values in the inspector. So I'm just going to set the width and height to 1500 by 300. With those values in the scene editor, you'll see the text box itself fit nice and snug within the dialog box. And I'm going to up the font size to something like on dialog box and go down to UI. And we're going to use text mesh pro, which is a much more high quality text object. And it'll filling that out. We can then right click on dialog. I'm just going to fill in some rect, which is a much more high quality text object. And it'll ask us here if we want to import these by the time you're done filling that out. We can then right click on dialog box and go down to UI. And we're going to use text mesh pro. which is a much more high quality text object. And it'll ask us here if we want to import the essentials, which we do. So we'll press import. Once that's done importing the essentials, we can click on our text object that has been created. We'll come down here to vertex color and open it up. And I'm just going to make the, once that's done importing the essentials, we can click on our text object that has been created. We'll come down here to vertex color and open it up. And I'm just going to make the color black. We can set it to bold. And I'm going to up the font size to something like 70. And then once again, we're going to change the rect values in the inspector. So I'm just going to set the width and height to 1500 by 300. With those values in the scene editor, you'll see the text box itself fit nice and snug within the dialog box. We can now come down to the Projects tab and right-click on Assets and go to Create, C# Script, and I'm going to call this Dialog. Let's drag the dialog script onto the dialog box, and then double-click the script to open it up. Alright, so first things first. In the script. At the top of this page, let's add a using statement. So using TM Pro. This is to make sure we can reference this TextMesh Pro component. And we'll go ahead and start with all the variables we're going to need for this script. So the first thing, like we just mentioned, we need a reference to our TextMesh Pro component. So we'll say public TextMesh Pro UGUI, and I'll call this text component. We then need a collection of different sentences or lines of dialogue we want to display. I'm just going to use a string array for simplicity, so I'll say public string open close square brackets, and I'm going to call this lines. We're also going to type out each character at a specific speed, so we need to capture that speed. Or with we just want up conversation, so we'll say private int void. So let's go ahead and do this. Underneath the start and update methods, we'll go to the function. As it name, you can into the at this point equals string and our start coroutine, and then for an argument we'll pass in type line, which is the method we just created, and then start coroutine, and then for an argument we'll pass in type line, which is the method we just created. And then in our start method, what we want to do is say text component dot text equals string dot empty, and then we just want to call our start dialog method. And at this point, if you go into Unity and select your dialog box, let's drag in our text object into the text component. We can set the text speed to something like 0.3, and then we can open up the lines collection, and I'll set the size to something like 2. So that when we start the game, you can see that it's typing it out character by character, but we don't have any way to move to the next line of dialogue, so let's work on that now. Without Unity and that to car array. So what this says, it takes the string and then index, and then we'll say dot to car array. So with this says it takes the of the. So now let's just leave it at that. Let's go ahead and numerator as the return type one. So we can simply say for each car for character in our lines collection of the current index, and then we'll say dot to car array. So what this says, it takes the string and then breaks that down into a character array. We're also going to type out each character at a specific. We just need like a private int. Go ahead and do this. Underneath the start and update methods, we'll go ahead to zero different. So we'll say I. Character for characters created component. We can set the text called void down, and then we'll pass our text component dot text or dot car. The syntax for this is a little different, so we'll say I. Enumerator dialog, open close square bracket. We need a reference C, and then we must say yield return new wait for seconds. Script onto the dialog box, and then double click this as the return type, and we'll call this type our text object into the text component. We can set the text speed to something like 0.3. And we can open up the lines collection, and I'll set the size to something like 2. So then when we start the game, you can see that it's typing it out character by
Hey guys, welcome to a new tutorial today. I'm Matt, this is Speed Tutor, and I'm going to show you how to change the font or to add a font to TextMesh Pro to be able to use it as you see fit. Now you can see in my scene, I've got a bunch of different style fonts that I've got, and we're going to be able to use these in UIs and other things which take TextMesh Pro. Now, normally when you import a font into Unity, it will come as a regular font type which you can get online for free in different places, even get them from your computer if you type in fonts and you drag which one you might like. Now by default, if we've got a UI element which is a TextMesh Pro one, it will be a specific font asset, and we can't actually drag one of these in there to change the style. So how do we need to do that? In 2018 and above, you have TextMesh Pro automatically imported, so you won't need to import it, but say you do, you can go to Window, Package Manager, see that it brings up a flyout pop-out, and we can add something here. So I'm going to add one of my fonts, which I've got here. I'm going to drag it in. We could set the auto sizing to what sampling point size we should have. We can set the padding, so the amount of space between each object that we may have. The packing method, which can be kept on fast. The type of resolution, if you need to have a higher resolution. Texture for the actual text itself. Whether the character set is any different to ASCII, but if we've got numbers and letters, we can leave it at this. And we can keep everything as by default, pretty much. And we can click Generate Font Atlas, and it will just pretty much create our font into one atlas texture with exactly what this font is like. And then we can press save, and then we can just save it in the folder that we already have, and we just click save, and it will save it above my other one. So the Jalisco, I will have a new asset which will be the font
by character coroutine of type line. Otherwise, if when we play it, we can click and it instantly fills out the messaging. We can click again to proceed to the next line. And when the dialogue's finished, we can click and it closes the dialogue box.